Hello. Glad to be with you guys today and excited to tell you all more about Pykus. I founded this company with Tommy Strejewski when we were residents at Mass Pioneer several years back now. He's here as well. And this was the inspiration for us. It was looking at these patients face down after retina surgery. It's bad for patients. It's also not great for outcomes. And we, as naive residents, said there must be a better way to do this, and that sort of launched this journey, which has now resulted in a clinical stage company. So for those that aren't familiar, the retina lines the back of the eye like wallpaper, and you can, if you're very unlucky, get a rip or a hole in that wallpaper. Fluid can start to go through that hole underneath the retina, and the wallpaper or the retina can start to fall away from the back of the eye and into the eye, creating a retinal detachment. This causes vision loss, and you have to have a surgery to fix that. When you do the surgery, you put the retina back out, and you seal up that hole or that tear with laser. And then importantly, you put a gas bubble in the eye, which keeps the retina temporarily in place while you wait a week or two for that laser to form the permanent seal. And it's the gas bubble that causes all the problems for patients and the complications, some of the complications associated with the surgery. And this happens a lot, about 150,000 retinal detachments in the US alone. Why is it so bad? Well, the standard of care has very significant limitations, both early on, right after surgery, and later on. So initially, you have this eye filled with gas. You cannot see at all through the gas bubble. As I said, many patients are face down almost full time for a week or more after surgery. In the midterm, 1 to 2 months, you still have very limited vision as that gas bubble typically goes away slowly. You can't often return to work. You cannot fly in an airplane. You can't image the retina. And then long term, some interesting things, the vision is never really as good as it was before the retina detached. Is that because the gas bubble sort of smashed the retina back in place quickly? And could a different technique perhaps address that issue? Of course, some surgeries fail because patients are not compliant with the positioning. And then almost everyone gets a cataract, and some of that is due to the gas bubble pushing up against the lens. And so we said, could we develop a different way of doing the surgery that would eliminate the significant drawbacks? And so we developed Pykus 101, which works in a totally novel way. So you do the vitrectomy in the normal fashion. You've reattached the retina. You've lasered around the tear. Those are those little yellow dots in the diagram. And then, instead of putting the gas bubble in, you bring Pykus 101 into the eye through a curved cannula, and you apply this, basically this focal sealant, just over the retinal tear. And that sealant, if you look at it in cross-section, is going to prevent fluid from going through that hole and redetaching the retina while you wait for the laser to form the permanent seal. So it's a way of repairing the retinal detachment without using the gas bubble. And then after surgery, while the patient's recovering, the hydrogel slowly goes away over the course of 12 weeks, and the patient is left with an attached retina and a much better post-operative course. We don't have time to go into the chemistry in detail here, but it's basically an epoxy-like polymer system, a modified HA and a modified PEG. You mix these two together, and 5 minutes later, you're ready to put it in the eye during surgery. So if you do the retinal detachment repair this way, patients can see immediately after surgery. They're no longer positioning at all after surgery. You've eliminated patient compliance as a factor for surgical success. They can get back to work, they can see, they can fly, you can get an OCT of the retina. And then long-term, some super exciting things are maybe there's this possibility of better visual recovery, potentially reduced PVR formation, which can result in recurrent retinal detachments. And then there's the potential for less cataract formation, which I said happens in almost everyone who has a retinal detachment repair with a gas bubble. We investigated this product in an 11-patient pilot study, which we just completed in Australia. It was done at 3 different sites with 3 different surgeons, and the main objective was safety and tolerability of Pykus 101. And we followed these patients for 16 weeks. So first, does it work? Well, the FDA pre-specified target rate for single surgery success after retinal detachment repair is 72%, and in the intent to treat population, we hit that mark at 73%. We did learn about how surgical education could improve. 2 of the 3 failures were related to either the gel being put into the eye too soon or not enough gel being applied to the retinal break. And these are learnings that we'll take forward to the pivotal trial where we expect to achieve even greater success than this 73% mark. Patients obviously could see better right away. The green line is patients that received the Pike 2101 treatment, and you can see they're back up to being able to drive, having quite good vision within just a week or two of surgery. And the red line here represents kind of the standard patient that has gas. They have very poor vision for weeks after surgery. Importantly, others have tried similar techniques and approaches, and one of the big things you run into is problems with intraocular pressure during product clearance, and we didn't see any episodes of device-related IOP problems with Pike 2101. We didn't have any SAEs. We only had kind of the normal range of AEs that you would expect after patients experiencing retinal detachment surgery. And this is the first patient that we treated. You can see here on post-op week 1, they're up and about, there's no positioning. They can see clearly 20/80 is pretty good for just a week after surgery. And that patient went on to see quite well 20/40, 16 weeks after, without any positioning at all. This is a surgical video. This is extremely fast. But really the purpose of this is to show you what it looks like when you put the gel in. This is the surgeon shaving over that retinal tear, now doing the air fluid exchange, draining that little bit of fluid from the retinotomy, lasering around the retinotomy, and then now applying the gel to that tear. And you can see it's kind of like a viscoelastic, for those that are familiar with that. It stays right on the retina where you put it. Here he is applying the sealant to the retinotomy, and then you're done with the surgery. So we completed the pilot study. We expect to submit our IDE towards the end of 25 or early 26 and start a pivotal study either in the US or in Europe in 2026 with expected hopeful approval of a product towards the end of 27. With that, I'll conclude and just say this is a transformative innovation for retina surgery. It's a large market. We have a strong IP position, and we hope we can bring it to patients soon. Thank you.